What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're covering door procedures as part of our CQB debrief series. If you guys have missed our previous videos, like our weapon manipulation video, you can find that up top here, as well as our CQB overview video that we did as well. You can learn more about context, rules of engagement, and so on, as well as how to manipulate this rifle moving through a structure. And with all that out of the way, let's get into today's video. My name is Josh Nelson. I'm the owner of Force Frontier Training Group. We do combatives, firearms, pistol, rifle, as well as force-on-force training, scenario-based stuff. So if you guys are interested in learning more about the training that we offer, simply go to forcefrontier.com to find out more. So there are really three major things that we got to keep in mind when we're working on a closed door. What side of the door is the knob in relation to where I'm standing? Is it an inward opening door or an outward opening door? And lastly, does it require a breach? Today's video isn't going to be covering working with tools like a Halligan, a ram, explosive breaching, or anything like that. It's simply how to open the door and to try and limit the amount of angles we're exposed to, as well as limiting our exposure when we're opening the door so we're not catching bullets. We'll start with the easiest thing, and that is inward opening, same side knob. Simply because the knob is here, I'm not catching what we call first light, and it's inward opening, so it's easy to manipulate. Just simply throw it open and I can take a couple steps back and again, limit my exposure. There's two schools of thought with this. I can open the door and use speed, surprise, and violence of action and all of that stuff to make entry, or I can open it and what we call let it breathe, back up, let the door breathe, nobody's screaming, nobody's shooting at us. Okay, now we can take this room, right? That's really gonna be situationally dependent. What is the context? Again, I would refer you back to our CQB overview video so we can cover more of the ins and outs of why we do what we do. We refer to the same side knob as a gift. It's a gift because, again, I'm not exposed as this door opens, and it's inward opening, so it's really easy to open that door. As far as procedurally, what I would recommend when we're utilizing, let's say we have a rifle or pistol, and I need to open this door, there's a lot of individuals out there that'll say you never take your dominant hand off fire controls. When it comes to opening this door, you could simply reach inside, I could face away, open, or I can just take my outboard hand and throw the door open. It's much easier to open the door with my outboard hand, in this case my right hand, to open the door and take off fire controls. Behaviorally, I'm gonna put my left hand on the gun before I fire anyway. So my school of thought with that is I'm gonna push open. If I encounter somebody, I'm gonna come up to the gun nice and smooth. Or if I opened it with my left hand, I'm not gonna just start firing from here. My left hand's gonna marry up on the gun anyway, so I don't worry about taking my dominant hand off fire controls. I simply wanna open that door as easily as possible. All right, one of our first rules with opening a door is if I'm catching first light, I'm ready to fight. Meaning my rifle is shouldered, I'm on fire controls, I'm ready to go. So if a buddy were to open this door for me, I'm catching first light, meaning as this door opens, exposure right here. Ideally, I would move over to be on the same side so that it's a gift. I can just simply open it up, not have as much exposure. But if I had to open it from the far side, I would, because of obstructions, it's cluttered, we have really tight hallways, crap everywhere, or the exposure I'm gonna have down the hall with all these other rooms and all these other angles is going to be more of a concern for me than me just simply opening the door from here, right? It's gonna be situational. So if I had to open the door, I'm gonna simply outboard hand, in this case my left hand, throw it open, and then immediately get back on fire controls as I back up. What I want to avoid is standing still as I open this door. All in one motion, I'm simply going to throw it open and then get back on fire controls. I can back up as far as I feel comfortable. Again, as long as I'm not in this threshold, catching rounds potentially, like we see far too often in law enforcement. Once they see that stimulus that you're here and you're opening that door, that becomes a major concern that they're just gonna start throwing rounds into the doorway. So if I can back up and let it breathe, that's what I'm gonna do. The alternative would be to breach and clear right away. right? Some element of surprise. It's really gonna be dependent on your context. It's gonna be dependent on your situation, and you gotta weigh the costs and benefits of each. So that's gonna be a game time decision. But those are really your two options from a far side knob approach. Back up, let it breathe. I need to be ready to fight because I'm gonna be catching first light. So now we're working with outward opening doors. Again, far side, near side knob is gonna be dictating our actions in terms of how we open this door. Now, as far as a far side knob goes, outward opening is gonna be a problem because I'm gonna have to run this thing all the way down. With a buddy, it's gonna be much simpler, right? We call it just a roll and pin. I would roll this door all the way to the wall, and a buddy would fill in that gap to cover me with plates as well as with lethal. If I'm doing this by myself, I'm gonna take, again, hand off the gun, outboard hand, I'm gonna grab, I'm gonna run it back, and then try to fill that space. If I feel like it's not a reciprocating door, meaning it's not gonna keep going back and forth, I'm gonna simply grab it and launch it if I can. So pull it all the way back, and then I can get back onto the gun, right? I'm not catching first light as I run this door. Now, obviously this isn't ballistic protection, I understand that, but if I'm opening it and getting out of the way, my chances of not catching bullets are much higher, of course. So one more time, outboard hand. If I'm doing this as a single man CQB, I'm just gonna grab this, run it, and then get back on the gun, and then take my angles however we see fit. So if you guys remember, near side inward opening, we were not catching first light. But obviously things change when we have an outward opening door. So now I am catching first light from this door. So that's a problem that we have to address, and I'm gonna address that simply by outboard hand grabbing the door. I'm gonna swing it open, and so I don't cover your view. I'm just gonna swing it open all the way, let it breathe, and then start taking those angles. So if I were to do this in real time, and I'm just gonna swing this open, all the way to the wall, I'm going to outboard hand, I'm gonna breach while I back up, let it breathe, and then I can start taking my angles, however you prefer to clear, whether that's a dynamic, whether that's panning, pieing, or 45-90 stuff, that's on you. But as I breach that open, I can swing it open, let it breathe, nobody's screaming, nobody's shooting at me. All right, now I feel safe to go up and start clearing that space. All right, let's cover reciprocating doors, meaning the door is just gonna keep coming back and closing. This is probably worst case scenario as far as the door goes, outside of it being barricaded or locked to where it requires a breach. Same side knob, let's cover that first. Inward opening, we know at this point that I'm not catching first light, so I have the ability to take outboard hand, flip that thing open, crap, it's coming back into me. I hate the idea of now reapproaching and doing it again if we have an armed individual in there just waiting for us to make entry and then potentially firing rounds once they see stimulus. So there's really nothing we can do at this point outside of just entering this room. So you're gonna weigh your costs and benefits. Do you hear anything? Do you see anything? What is the intelligence telling us? Is somebody in this room, yes or no? Then we make a decision. But if we're gonna actually do it, and we don't have a way to pin this, or we don't have a way to send any other tool in, again, just focusing on the CQB aspect, I'm going to simply have to enter the room. There's really no finessing here because this door is gonna be a pain in the butt for us. So I swing it open, and I can pin here, or I can simply swing it open and enter the room all the way, right? Some element of surprise is gonna be mandatory for this because it's super dangerous dealing with this door. If we are dealing with this door from the far side knob, nothing really changes, right? We are catching first light, so we would prefer a buddy. But if we don't have one and we're doing this by ourselves, outboard hand goes to the door. I try to let it breathe. Back on fire controls. Crap, this thing's closing on me. It's gonna be the same procedure, right? It's gonna be either pin, or it's gonna be simply entering the room. Or I just throw it open, back on fire controls, and then I try to clear it. Not an ideal style of door, but inward opening, reciprocating doors, pain in the butt. you're just gonna have to simply go at some point. If we're trying to methodically move through a building, there's not like a risk of victims or anything like that. I need to be smart about it. There are ways we can pin it, but at some point we make it too complicated. I know some guys are like, we could tie it up, we could use a tool to like, secure the door. At some point you just gotta go. That's all time spent in the threshold, which is incredibly dangerous. So as you guys saw, it was very deliberate. Pin the door with my foot, or I just enter the room. That's gonna be required for these types of doors because they're not ideal. All right, so now we're dealing with an outward opening, reciprocating door. All right, so as I pull this thing open, it's gonna continuously shut on me unless I enter the room or I pin this door. Really similar to what we just covered with inward opening, nothing really changes. I would opt for like same side knob. I'm just going to simply open and pin or open and enter. It's really not any different. I am taking first light. I open this door, we're taking first light. That's a problem. So I swing this thing open and I pin it and then I enter, or I swing this thing open and I just simply enter. Right? Depending on your tactics, depending on your preference with style of CQB that you're doing, or depending on the situation that's unfolding right now, will dictate how fast we're going. But with outward opening, same side knob or far side knob, it doesn't really change it simply because either way, I'm gonna have to swing this thing open and pin, right? So even if I'm far side knob, I'm going to have to pin it, I'm going to have to enter. Now, as far as procedures with a buddy or a team, I would be designated breacher. I'm just gonna run this thing here and hold it open so the next guy, the 3-man, and so on, can fill in behind me. They can plate check me, get on their rifles, and cover me while I do the one job well, and that's opening the door. All right, guys, that's kind of a down and dirty version of door procedures if you're by yourself, worst case scenario, right? We don't necessarily encourage it if you can prevent it, but sometimes that's the case. You wanna get really good as the one man. We wanna train as the one man, get really good, and then when we fill in the support roles, we know what to do, right? Working with a team, working with a partner, even if it's home defense with your spouse, if you just simplify it, recognize this is a same side knob, this is an inward opening door, this is an outward opening door, and so on, that's gonna set you up really well because I can just now quickly problem solve and say, this is a same side knob, this is a far side knob, I know what to do. And there, of course, are times where you're gonna take a near side knob, or a far side knob rather, and you're just gonna take yourself to the other side and make it easier for you. Take that gift, same side knob, you just have to weigh ultimately what the advantage of that would be versus maybe the other areas that you're exposing yourself with. But as far as doors go, that's what we have for you. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure you leave them down below. Consider subscribing so that we can continue to grow this channel. And check out forcefrontier.com for all your life-saving gear and life-saving training. With that, guys, we'll see you on the next video.